Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. I'm excited today because I got Andrew Sendejo, former Viking safety, joining me in the Hanging Ron Johnson segment. You don't want to miss that because he's going to tell us, I think he knocked a teammate out of a game. We got to talk about that. But also, Sam Darnold, is he coming back to the Vikings? Should he come back to the Vikings? Or is this J.J. McCarthy's team? We'll talk about all that and much more coming up next on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. And it starts now.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me on the Ron Johnson Show. For those watching on YouTube, we appreciate you. For those on Amazon Fire and Roku, please just tell somebody and tell somebody else. You can find the Ron Johnson Show every day on Locked On Sports Minnesota. You just have to go to YouTube. You can hit that subscribe button. All you need is an email address. It's free, but you can follow along all season. We got some great interviews coming up as the season goes on, and they are going to the playoffs, people. So we will have playoff football on the Ron Johnson Show, and of course Locked On Sports Minnesota all season long. We might even get to the Super Bowl this year, and that's why this is so exciting. But I want everybody to know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Just place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $150. That's $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, like I said, we got the Daily 3 coming up. We're going to talk a little Timberwolves. We're going to talk Gophers and mayonnaise. I don't know what's going on with that, but we'll talk about that. I saw a video of Goldie, so we'll explain that as well with the mayonnaise. And Michael Vick. Is Michael Vick going to be there? We'll talk about that, but also we have to talk about, at the top of the hour, Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings. But, of course, stick around for the Hang Around Johnson segment because I got Andrew Sendejo joining me. And as I bring my producer into the show, Sam Extra, my co-host, my guy, Sam Darnold. So everybody keeps going, and I just heard Ben Lieber say this, and this is my guy, but I don't agree with this. Ben Lieber said J.J. McCarthy has to start next year. He has to.
Yeah.
They have to see what they have. Why do they have to see what they have? And that's where I struggle when people keep saying that the Vikings need to see what they have in J.J. McCarthy. Why? We've seen so many failed early starts for young quarterbacks who don't have time to really grow. Here's the thing. He wasn't a great college quarterback. When I say great, I mean statistically. He wasn't dropping like 500-yard passing games in college football. So it's like, why would we expect him to come and operate a high-flying offense at the clip in which it needs to be operated when he wasn't a Heisman candidate? He wasn't Sam Darnold was one of the top quarterbacks in his class, if not the top quarterback in his class when he came out. He was known for throwing the ball at USC. Like that's what's so crazy to me. And so when you look at J.J. McCarthy, he came from a run system. He came from a team that ran the ball. Against Penn State in the second half, he did not back up one time and throw the ball. That's how much trust they had in their quarterback. Now, nothing against him. I think he's going to be a great quarterback. But why not let him take another full, if you can franchise Sam Darnold and it fits and Sam's not going to be disgruntled, why not do it? Hey, Sam, let's run it back, man. We'll franchise you, man. We'll try to get you some additional incentives. If you take us back to the Super Bowl or to the playoffs, we'll give you this bonus. Because I don't think, and I haven't looked into his contract, I don't think anybody's looked into his contract of this. Are there any escalators in there right now where he gets bonuses for wins and going to the playoffs and going to the Super Bowl? Because I don't think he expected it. I don't think they expected it. I don't think his agent expected it. I don't think he was signing to say, let's throw a whole bunch of stuff in there so we can get to 20 to 30 million. Now we'll find out maybe if there's in there. We'll find out if the Vikings come back and say, look, man, we paid you 10, but you're playing worth 20, man. We'll do you a solid. We'll give you 10 more now if you sign for 20 next year. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do where you can say, we'll give you a $10 million signing bonus to sign and 20 for the season. That's $30 million that he was not going to get. Now, could he probably get $100 million? Because I did this exercise after the Vikings game on the post game. I can name some quarterbacks for you, Sam, and I'll name them for you. And you just tell me, would you take Sam Darnold over them. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's play.
Gardner Minshew.
Darnold.
Geno Smith.
Can I want to look up Geno's age real quick. Geno is 34. So because of the age thing.
Oh, yeah, I can say the age too, because it gives me the age next to the name too. So I'll give you the ages too as we're going. So Geno Smith, 34, Sam Darnold, 27.
Yeah, for that reason, I'd go Darnold.
Baker Mayfield, 29.
This is tough. I like Baker a lot. Still going to go Sammy.
Aaron Rodgers, 41.
Yeah, Sam. Sorry, Aaron.
Derek Carr, 33.
Darnold. Got to go Darnold.
Matthew Stafford, 36.
This is, yeah. I think I still stick with Stafford on this one, but man, that age is getting up there.
And so after that, I think a lot of people would take these other quarterbacks over. And so here's the one for me that I still would probably take Darnold, but you tell me. Kyler Murray, 27, same age.
Yeah, that's interesting. He's so talented. He's so talented, and he's only 27. Probably Kyler because he can move so well, but it's starting to get a little dicey with his career and his inability to be consistent.
And the last one, because you have to put injury in this, Tua Tagovailoa at 26.
Yeah, again, super interesting. Because I feel like he's one concussion away from maybe ending his career. So I would rather have Sammy, I think, for the injury concerns.
And I'm guessing most people would take Josh Allen. They would take Kirk Cousins. They take Patrick Mahomes. They probably take Deshaun Watson. And that's if he's healthy. Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott. So those are the quarterbacks that I would probably say most people would say, yeah, give me them over Sam Darnold. But here's why I threw those quarterbacks out to you. The guys you said you would take in order for Sam Darnold to feel secure, $37.5 million a year is what they're getting. So that was Derek Carr's number. Baker Mayfield's is $33.3 million. And so I say that to say, when you think about Sam Darnold, where he is in his career, what it might take to get him back, 37.5 is the number, quote unquote, 33 maybe, based on like player. But also it was hard for you to decide at those. The ones you easily jumped over, Geno and the other ones, you're looking at more like 28 million. So that's for his agent now to figure out. So here's where I go with that. If you can get him for 30, I say you get him. And then you have to look at J.J. McCarthy. For me, I don't feel like you rush him onto the field, because if he's coming off of a meniscus, full repair, you don't know if he's going to be fully ready to go. It says it takes a year. So why would you wait exactly a year and then think like, oh yeah, September, we're putting him out there as a starter? Why do that to him? Now, a lot of people are saying, well, look, if it doesn't work, you have Daniel Jones. Now, would you rather have, that's what I was going to ask you, Sam, would you rather have a Daniel Jones, knowing that the Giants have to pay him because you could pay him X and he's still on the books for the Giants for whatever his guarantees are? Would you do that, or would you rather have Sam Darnold over Daniel Jones?
Yeah, that is so. We're going to talk about this for the next 6 months, Ron. You realize that, right?
Yeah.
The Daniel Jones thing is only interesting because of how cheap he's going to be. Sam Darnold is going to cost. It's the number of years that gets me. Like, I don't know if I want to give 3 years or more to him. I'm more interested in the franchise tag. It's 3 years of Darnold, and he might be. If he continues this, great. Then it's a great deal. But that's basically the entire J.J. McCarthy rookie deal. That's where I just get a little bit, do we really want to waste that window?
And that's what's so funny about when you look at the number of quarterbacks. So right now, like Daniel Jones, when you go to his sports tracker, because they have his sports tracker now as a Minnesota Vikings quarterback, and they have his total contract with the Vikings, $383,000. And that's $383,000 guaranteed. He's a 2025 free agent. And so that's what's so funny is the Giants have to pay him the rest of that money. The Vikings only are paying him $383,000. And so that's the other thing you have to think about is if he's a 2025 restricted free agent, I'm pretty sure he can like say, nope, I want the rest of that money. Like I'm not doing anything. I'm not redoing the contract. I'm not trying to re-sign with a different team. Or so when you think about that, the Vikings can say, look, for 2025, here's what we'll pay you. And you go to arbitration and get the rest from the Giants. And I don't see why he wouldn't do that. Why wouldn't he want to what's his name? Russell Wilson. Like, why wouldn't you want to screw your old team? Like, why wouldn't you want to make them pay for you and you go and you stay on another team and learn under Kevin O'Connell? And so that's the conundrum that we're going to be in. You're right, for the next 6 to 8 months as people try to figure out, like, when training camp comes around after the draft, because the Vikings don't have a lot of draft capital. So do they use any of these quarterbacks? Do they try to sign them and then trade them to get some draft capital? Because Sam Darnold, I mean, what would you, if you are the Giants, would you go get Sam Darnold? Would you want to trade a first-round pick, second-round pick for Sam Darnold, or is he not worth that to you? If you're the Raiders, do you want to go to get Shedeur Sanders, or do you want to say, hey, man, like we want the Sam Darnold guy. Like, we think he can help us. But look at the Jets. They went and got they did everything for A-Rod, and it's not working. Like, it's not working. He is worse. His team is worse than it was with Zach Wilson, and he has way more weapons. Now, his weapons are old. So that's the problem with like the thought process of a lot of people saying Sam Darnold, we want JJ McCarthy, but you don't know if it's going to work. Sam Darnold works. And I always love the old adage, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. I forgot what movie that was from. It might've been 007 or something, but a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Why would you give away this bird in your hand, Sam Darnold, for a possible JJ McCarthy, Daniel Jones partnership in the future, and those 2 in the bush, and you have no idea what you're going to get in that bush? So that's why I like the Sam Darnold thing. I don't think you need to force JJ McCarthy onto the field. Let him learn on his feet. He's learning in a chair. That's like you, Sam. That's like me and you sitting here listening to Kevin O'Connell talk all day. We're not actually getting out there doing the movements, doing the throws, watching the stuff happen at full speed. So is he really learning, or is he just a student right now? He's a student. He's just like a coach. So I would rather see him healthy for a year behind Sam Darnold, maybe trade Daniel Jones, like, hey, look, we'll do this, and then we'll trade you, or let Daniel Jones hit free agent market. I think I think his pickup was merely, we know we have a chance to win the Super Bowl, but if we have to do it with Nick Mullins, we probably can't. And I think this is what this is. This is one of those Kevin O'Connell, maybe he's a Minnesotan that we didn't know he was. Like, he knows Minnesota's known, and it's just the NFL, but he knows Minnesota's known for the other shoe to drop, for something to happen, for like, because when Sam Darnold got hurt before and went out for a play, everybody's like, oh, here we go. Then we knew it. And he came back in and had a great game. So I think, he's thinking like, if this guy gets hurt against the Lions and we're 15-2, Daniel Jones is going to have to lead us against the Falcons. And I think Daniel Jones can do it. He's learning right now on his feet. He's practicing. He's out there with his helmet on. He's throwing. He's learning. He's listening. He's got the headset on during the games. Like, because there's not a lot of practice squad guys get to dress and be on the sideline. A lot of practice squad guys are up in the booth, or they're at home watching the game. Like, he's actually on the sidelines listening. So they're very particular with how they're handling Daniel Jones. And that's what I like about it. But Sam, when you think about Sam Darnold in Minnesota, do you think, and I know that's the question of the day, and people, you let us know in the chat, will his postseason performance determine his future? What do you think?
I do think that. I think that if he flames out in the first game, like Kirk Cousins throwing short of the sticks against the Giants, if Sam Darnold has a tough first playoff game, it feels like you turn the page. It feels like you let him go. And if he wins 2 playoff games, gets you to the doorstep of the Super Bowl or even in the Super Bowl, I think it changes the equation. Price tag probably goes up a little bit, but can you really turn your back on Darnold at that point, especially if he's the engine behind your victories?
Yeah.
Like Kwesi always prides himself on adjusting his strategy as he gets new information. And if you find out that Sam Darnold is a postseason warrior and he can win you games in the postseason, that is some pretty important new information to add to the equation. So I think that probably puts you in a headspace, Ron, where you may have to think about trading JJ McCarthy if you commit to Darnold long term. I think
and that's what people don't get is like it's not unheard of to move on from an asset that you don't know about. Like it's because that's the thing, nobody knows. So now it's your word against theirs. Like, hey, this is what we saw in practice, man. He was going to be our starter. Like he was going to start week 6 if he hadn't got hurt. Like you could start spinning all types of narratives to just make people want to go get him. Because again, I go to the Oakland Raiders. Or Las Vegas Raiders. Sorry. I go to the Rams. Like, how long is Stafford going to go? You know, like, are they going to be looking for somebody to be his backup to then be a starter? Could Daniel Jones end up with Sean McVay? Would they take a JJ McCarthy? Would they take a Sam Darnold? You know, like Sean McVay is like Kevin O'Connell and like with the 49ers. I know the 49ers are probably looking like, oh, we didn't realize Sam Darnold could have been this good for us. Now, not to say it's worth it because Brock Purdy's on his rookie deal, so it's the same thing for them. But, you know, like a lot of these teams now are like, oh, okay, this Sam Darnold guy is better than we thought. Like, we didn't think he was going to be that. And so you have to look at the Browns. Like, what are they going to do? Is Jameis Winston their guy? Or, you know, can they find a way to get rid of Deshaun Watson and just cut the ties? So there's going to be a lot of interest in Sam Darnold. There's going to be a lot of interest in the Minnesota Vikings. And what are you guys going to do? You guys got 3 quarterbacks that could be NFL starters for any team right now. And so that, except for the Giants, because Daniel Jones cannot go there. But, you know, they would take JJ McCarthy. I think they would take Sam Darnold. Like, they're not happy with DeVito, and I don't know what pick they're going to have. That's the other thing. Do you start trying to tank to get higher? And if you tank, who's out there? Like, do you want a smaller Dylan Gabriel? Because he's not big. Are you scared of that because of Bryce Young? Are the Carolina Panthers happy with Bryce Young? You know, like, so there's so many different scenarios for Sam Darnold, but we already know Sam Darnold was with the Panthers. You know, do you go back? You know, are you willing to go back to some of these teams? Because I made a comment, like, I'm like, the Jets probably are like, dang, let's go get Sam Darnold again and see what happens. Totally different staff, totally different group, you know, like it's going to be a different head coach. Like, why? Like, and the Jets fired Robert Saleh. Who are they going to hire? Would they come get a Brian Flores? Now, most likely not, because people are saying you stick with it. If you defense, you go offense. But that's an old, antiquated thought process too. But do they go get a Ben Johnson to the Jets, to the big market, to the Big Apple? And Ben Johnson's like, I saw this Sam Darnold kid, man. Come with me to New York, big market. We know you struggled there. Let's do a redemption story with the Jets. Like the owners, that's different. The owners and the GM and the staff did you wrong, not the owners. The owners wanted you, they drafted you, but the team did you wrong. Would you go back for a redemption story, or is there just too much bad blood, too much mental anguish to even think about going back to the Jets? Because at the end of the day, people are like, oh, I wouldn't go back there. You wouldn't go back there for $40 million? Oh, I would for sure go back. Like, I don't care. Like, Sam, like, do you think Sam Darnold's saying no to $100 million from the Jets?
Boy, well, is that the only offer? I think he would rather take $90 million from someone else.
Okay.
I don't think, I think he's had enough of that market. I think
it's a big market. It's a lot of stress. It's a big market. Like Minnesota at 11. Could you imagine the Jets at 11-2 right now? Like, we would hear about them every day. So the Vikings at 11-2 get no love. They get no national coverage. They're waiting for Sam Darnold to lose. But yeah, so for my answer, will the postseason performance determine Sam Darnold's future? I say if he flames out in the first game, yes. But if he wins game 1, beats the Bucs or the Falcons, which Kirk Cousins might get his revenge, or they might have Michael Penix take the. I mean, could you imagine that? Michael Penix comes in, plays, gets the Falcons back in the playoffs as the 4 seed, wins the South, and then the Vikings have to go down there and play Michael Penix this time and not Kirk Cousins. Like, that would be another, like, and if this happens, Sam, make sure we replay this back. Mm-hmm. Make sure we replay this scene and tweet it out saying Ron Johnson called this, that Michael Penix will play, Kirk Cousins will be benched, the Falcons somehow, because the South is not great, the Falcons somehow get back in the playoffs, and the Vikings have to travel to Atlanta to face Michael Penix this time, not Kirk Cousins. And the media frenzy begins with all the Vikings, fans that are like, oh, we knew Kirk couldn't do it. And like, that would just be absolute, like, the worst case scenario for Kirk Cousins. Like, for him to get benched, Michael Penix take him to the playoffs, and then he plays the Vikings, and he's a backup as he goes out to hug JJ McCarthy and all these, Justin Jefferson and all his old teammates come to Minnesota, and they're like, oh, he's a backup. Because I know he's friends with like Andrew DePaula and somebody, because his wife was sitting in the Vikings section. Julie Cousins was in the Vikings section for this game because she's friends with, like, I think Andrew DePaula's wife or whoever's still on the team's wife. Yeah. So they, she was with them, because I was like, why isn't she over with the Falcons fans? But she was sitting with her friends because they were here for what? How many years were they here? They were here for a long time. I feel like
6.
Was it 6 years?
Yep.
So you create real friendships with some of these wives, and so yeah, she came back and hung out with them. But that'll do it for Sam Darnold. We'll see what happens. Like, this is the fun part of football is Sunday we get to sit back and watch football. And then Monday we get to get up and I'll probably come on the football party, I'm guessing. And then there's football Monday night, and we're going to have a Monday night postcast. So make sure you guys tune into that. But we'll be back with Andrew Sendejo on the Hanging Ron Johnson segment after a word from our sponsors.
We're brought to you today by Game Time. Game Time is the best way to get tickets in your area. I tell you what, the Game Time Picks feature filters out all the fluff. So when you look at tickets, you only see the best deals, and that includes U.S. Bank Stadium, Vikings Bears, Monday night. Want to know the cost to get in? It's not crazy. $119 to go watch an 11-2 team maybe clinch a playoff spot Monday night at the bank. Check it out. Game Time. And you can save some money right now on Game Time as well if you use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Game Time has all-in pricing, so there's no hidden fees. Make sure that is toggled on. They've got the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. It is so easy to get sports, music, comedy, theater tickets. On this show, we focus on the sports. Go watch Vikings Bears. Use Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Once again, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Well, now it's time for the Hanging with Ron Johnson segment. This past weekend, 3-2. Here we go. Well, now it's time for the Hanging with Ron Johnson segment. And as I promised, Andrew Sendejo is joining us. And I was at the Vikings game this past weekend. And as you know, we do the pregame show. And I see Xavier Rhodes down there. And then I start to see pictures. And I end up realizing, like, I had walked right by because I got a chance to hug Xavier Rhodes as we're leaving the field. And I realized, I walked right by Andrew Sendejo, and I didn't say one word. And so I was like, you know what? Let me reach out to him. You never know with social media, but we got him joining us from 2011 to 2019. This was a Minnesota Viking. For those that I play receiver, so he was a guy that I did not like because I was like, I would have loved to have been his teammate, but I would have hated to play against him because you had no idea how hard you were going to get hit or if what was going to happen. And Andrew Sendejo was one of the safeties in the NFL that struck fear in a lot of teams. I actually had a tweet one time, and you might not know this, went viral because of your response. And so you might not remember this game, you may, but you guys were playing the Saints in the Dome, or not the Dome, sorry, US Bank. And Mike Thomas runs like a dragon, a slant, and then a flat route. And he absolutely just flattens Xavier Rhodes, I think is who it was. I don't know if you hit somebody later or something, but I just tweeted, and I didn't say anything besides, hey, this Michael Thomas thing, like he knew what he was doing. That was a blah, blah. And then like his fullback tried to come to his rescue, like, man, clearly you don't know football. And I'm like, well, clearly look at my bio. I play receiver in the NFL, so I know you don't just run into the DB following the flat route. Like, you're supposed to just run your slant. He absolutely decapitated him. And then I think you commented or something like, yeah, it's funny when safeties do it, but when receivers do it, everybody act like it's okay. And so it blew up from there where everybody started commenting, current players, former players, and everybody was losing their minds. And in the end, Michael Thomas hasn't been right since then. It feels like he's just kind of like been hurt. Things have not gone his way. But for you in that situation, so I start there. When you see receivers take their shots at DBs, do you ever think like, man, if I get a shot, I'm taking my shot on this guy?
I think that about every receiver. I don't pick and choose, but yeah, I think as a receiver, you probably don't get many chances to maybe line up a DB, maybe on a crack block every now and then. So
no, never.
They definitely are thinking the same thing. And, for someone that kind of is more of a physical player, they're probably thinking, well, let's give this guy a taste of his own medicine and see how he likes it, kind of, getting hit in the side of the head. So I've always had the thought process of like, as soon as the ball is snapped, nobody is unprotected. Like, we all are aware that there is a football play going on here, and it's your responsibility to keep your head on a swivel and protect yourself to a certain extent, obviously after the play or something, from behind that you can't even see. That's flagrantly a dirty play, but for the most part, you should have awareness of where everyone's at, how the play is unfolding, and how you can protect yourself.
And for you, I don't know if you ever knew this, you might have, but there was a saying about Andrew Sendejo that, you know, he's going to hit you and he might hit his own teammate. I don't think you ever heard your teammate say that, or maybe you have and you're shaking your head.
Yeah.
Like, what would go through your head when you would hear guys like, you know, make jokes about that? Like, man, like he's going to hit somebody and it might be us.
Well, I think they appreciated it in a sense because they knew that I was playing as hard as I could and that I was at least a majority of the time going to hit the opponent. But I would get a lot of feedback from the D line that they're like, oh, we're going to put my back plate on this week. And especially my boy Xavier Rhodes, I hit him multiple times. I have knocked him out of a game. We were just talking about it at dinner. Actually, his wife was giving me hell about it. That she was glad that we don't play on the same team anymore because we actually got to play again together in Indianapolis in 2021.
Oh yeah.
And she was kind of just joking, like, I'm just thankful that he doesn't have to worry about you like knocking him out anymore because nobody else knocked him out except for you. And so that was just part of it. But I think I was on target for a majority of them. But just sometimes when there's so many bodies there and people are twisting around, you know how it goes. Like you kind of
friendly fire.
You got to attack the pile and get everybody. The goal is to get the guy down. And if you're kind of there too, then that it just happens to go like that sometimes.
Wait, so you knocked Xavier Rhodes out. So what happened? Like explain that play.
It was 2015 and we're playing the Chargers and they threw this 9-ball to Keenan Allen and I felt like I read it perfectly, and Keenan Allen made a hell of a grab. And like right when he caught it over the shoulder, he just like put his foot in the ground and stopped. And then me and Xavier just met right at the point right there. He almost did like a full scorpion, and then Keenan Allen just kind of walked into the end zone. It was very, very embarrassing. Not only because we gave up a touchdown, I knocked out my own teammate. It was probably on a Sports Center top 10 or something like that, but. I had a friend in the stands that play happened right in front of him, and so they happened to be snapping pictures. So I have this perfect photo in my phone of right when I make contact with Xavier, and his head is just like bent backwards.
Oh my goodness!
So I'll send it to him every now and then when I tell him that I miss him.
And so another moment that you know I see your video pop up a bunch, and it's more so again. You probably remember this. Golden Tate. They just showed this. Harrison Smith gets stiff-armed. Golden Tate like backpedals into the end zone, decides to do like a backflip. You catch him in the air and knock him out of bounds. But then you see Harrison Smith kind of looking around like, what just happened? And then you kind of get up like, wait, that's a touchdown? So like in those moments, like, do you guys go back to Harrison Smith? Like, dude, how'd you get stiff-armed like that? But then also, do you watch the hit back? Like, man, I actually knocked this dude 5 yards out of bounds.
I think I was more upset that we lost in a walk-off touchdown in overtime in a game that, you know, you should have won. But, you know, that I did see that play surface. That play surfaces up in my algorithm every now and then, which is kind of hilarious. So I'll make comments on there and stuff, and people will let's say like, oh, wow, that's like actually you in that play. And I'm like, yeah, that was me. But, yeah, whenever a guy like that somehow escapes two of your best players, Harrison and Xavier, and like skates down the sideline, you're kind of just in shock in the first place that he was because they were like in 2-man over there. So they essentially had two guys on him and he still somehow skated out. But that's what happens in this league when you're playing against really good players. And, you know, that was one of those plays that if I actually wouldn't have hustled to the ball, I wouldn't have even been in the frame and probably wouldn't have been a part of that play at all. But he started to kind of slow down right before the goal line. And I was thinking, maybe if I get one last kind of shot, I can maybe get the ball out or something like that. So some wishful thinking right there at the end. But
yeah, and that's what I was thinking too. Because when I saw the hit, like I mean, we were covering the game at that point. I do the Vikings fan line on K-Fan Radio, so we always talk about that. And that's the one thing I know. I remember that a lot of fans call in, they're pissed off, they're drunk. And that's what everybody was talking about. It's like, how do you let that happen? How like he's not even that fast. And it's like, hey, he's good though. Like it doesn't matter how fast he is. The dude is shifty. He runs good routes.
He was like, and you don't see a lot of people don't see a lot of highlights that people do in games every single week. Like right, they only pick the top 10 plays.
Right.
But when you watch film, there are so many plays that happen in the NFL every week that are qualified to be in the top 10. And some that just, they might not look flashy, but the players who know when they see it, they'll watch it and say like, dang, like that was a really good play by that guy. But you just don't see those on ESPN.
Yeah, you don't. And speaking of plays on ESPN, we all saw this. Trevor Lawrence, who now went to IR with a concussion, goes to slide, gets hit. Algier for the Houston Texans, and Tom Brady came out first, and he actually sided with the defensive players, which I don't think he would have done that when he played. But he sided with the
I don't know.
He sided with the defensive players and said that it's unfair that quarterbacks that are running. So if you have a Michael Vick, you take a Jalen Hurts, you look at a Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, guys that can move. They are a lot, and they slide for like, I mean, Kyler Murray this past weekend, they slide for like 10 yards. And so in order for a defensive player come in a split second, you have to decide, like, am I going to like let this guy just keep getting more yards, or am I going to try to make him go down as quick as possible? And then in that instance, it's like, I can't hit them high. So they go low, and then the player slides, and it's just boom, what happens? And now Algier hits, and you protect yourself. You don't want to just fall and let your body flail into a guy coming at you full speed. So it's a little bit of protection too. And now he's suspended. But Tom Brady came out saying it's unfair. Quarterbacks need to have to go head first or just pay the consequences of what happens, so on and so forth. When you hear stuff like that, like, because I know you understand it, you've been in it, but how hard is that? Like a guy coming at you, you have to decide in a split second, am I going to hit this guy, or is this guy going to slide and I need to pull up and jump over him or something?
Always err on the side of hitting the guy. Like, we're playing football. Like, once you are out of the pocket and you're running, you are a runner. And this is going to sound crazy, but I almost feel like it's a selfish move on the quarterback's behalf to jeopardize himself and the entire team by just trying to get that extra yard and not just getting down early. I think it's a great look. Clearly, nobody wants to see anyone get hurt. Nobody likes that. We're all out there for the same reason, to win the game, to make plays, and to make money for our family, right? Like that. We're all out there doing the same thing. We're all kind of essentially under the same umbrella of the NFL. Even though we're playing against each other, we're still kind of all in this fraternity together. But there is some onus on the quarterback to, why would you jeopardize like getting that close on a second down, like, in the game? Like, just get down. Let that be a lesson that if you're running, these quarterbacks can close extremely fast, and you might think you have time, but you don't have as much time as you think, and you need to get on the ground because there's guys out there like linebackers that will take your head off. And right. You go up a can of worms on this one because I can have a full dissertation on these things. But the other part is that we talked about the onus kind of being on the quarterback. Obviously, like as a defensive guy, and you can't jeopardize your career or giving up a first down by letting up because you thought he was going to slide, and now he runs for a first down, and now you look like an idiot.
True.
You get fired. You get whatever the case may be. Tom Brady has come out and said kind of multiple things, like kind of almost defending defenses about how these quarterbacks are not held accountable for the penalties that occur on the defense. So now they can throw balls into coverage where they're not supposed to, get the guy's head taken off. It's on the defense. These quarterbacks can run up the sideline, step out the last second, fake slide, do all these things, and they get hit, and now it's on the defense. So there's a little bit there that I don't think you can go as far as like penalizing for a late slide. That seems a little egregious, but I guess the other part of this is that the NFL obviously has to make a statement. They have to set an example. And what we would always call these when I played, we called these violence fouls. If the play ended up with a violent result, the NFL has to do something. They cannot just let that go without giving that guy a severe penalty, right? Like imagine after all the media coverage, if they didn't suspend him for 3 games, people would be losing their minds, right? Because it's a dirty play and all that. But if Trevor Lawrence didn't hit his head on the ground, how do we know that he would have even got knocked out? We're not even sure if that's what actually caused him to get knocked out or if it was the actual initial hit. A lot of times these hits, if your head hits the ground, that's what actually causes the concussion, because that is way harder than getting hit, by a forearm or a shoulder pad. And so when a guy gets knocked out, the referee has no choice but to like throw the flag. They have to, right? If he would have popped back up, I think they still probably would have thrown a flag, but there's no suspension, there's no nothing because it wasn't as violent. And also, I think what exacerbated the issue was that it was on their side, on the Jaguar sideline. If that play would have been on the Texans sideline, you would have had maybe like 2 guys over there. You might have had one guy from the Jag sideline like run all the way across the field, but it wouldn't have been as big of an issue. I think the 3-game suspension is insane. It doesn't match up with other suspensions that have occurred for guys kind of doing similar things. And I think ultimately both guys were just kind of caught in a bad situation where they're both trying to make a play and go as far and as hard as they can, which is kind of natural out there in the NFL.
Right. Because, when he got up, he didn't celebrate. I mean, some guys you can tell when they think they made a big hit and they didn't think anything wrong with it, they get up to celebrate. He jumped up right away like, oh, man, like I can't, and then he gets hit in the back of the head by Evan Ingram.
Yeah, he didn't even get time to like celebrate or not celebrate. As soon as he stood up, he got whacked in the back of the head.
Yeah, so so it is what it is when it comes to football. And you brought up a good point about receivers and DBs and the hits now, and they're lowering the angle, and Matthew Stafford calling Kirby Joseph dirty because he's taking out 2 tight ends by going at his knees. It's tough and tougher because it's like, do you want a concussion or do you want their knees? And I've actually talked to some tight ends, even Kyle Rudolph about this. He's like, man, I'd rather take the hit in the chest or the head. Like, don't hit my knees because I can't protect myself there. And so a lot of players have said that like, let them hit us in the shoulders and the head. Like, we can come back from that. Like a torn ACL, I can't come back from that. And so I don't know if the NFL will ever do it because, like, you're right, it looks violent on TV. Some of the sponsors don't like how that looks. The helmet people are talking about, my dad played for the Steelers and I still have his helmet over there. And that's his actual helmet. And the technology was terrible. And, he was a guy that was a hitter and had concussions. And he was, he played with Tony Dungy and Mel Blount and was in a coma, for a couple days after a big hit and blah, blah. And so their technology compared to today's technology, it's changed so much where I think people are forgetting that it's going to keep getting better, but guys are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so when you think about you as a player, do you ever go back and question? Because, have you had a concussion playing?
Oh, yeah.
Was it diagnosed right away, or was it one of those, like, you got your bell rung, you kept playing, and then later you realized, like, I had a concussion?
I never had I had one where there was like a bell rung. I came back and played. And then like after learning more and diving deeper into like concussions, I realized like, okay, that was a legit concussion. And even like after watching the tape of it, like I was out for a second. And then I've had some where I'm completely knocked out cold, laying on the field. Like we spoke about the Mike Thomas play in the Saints playoff game. And actually, my very last play of my NFL career, I got.
I was going to say, so wait, the Mike Thomas play, was that you or was that Xavier that got hit?
That was me. So Xavier.
So he hit you. Okay. All right.
Xavier was covering Mike Thomas on that dragon route, and he ran right into me. I was covering the guy to the flat.
So you got hit. Okay. So I was wondering how that. I could not remember how you were involved, but I remember it went viral because that was the whole thing, and and then I remember the fullback.
I think Xavier chirped in, and then the fullback used to be on the Vikings, Zach Line, and so I know Xavier. Like, I have this great picture of Xavier like getting held back by the teammates because he was like trying to fight Mike Thomas, and I'm in the background on the ground, concussed with all the training staff. So like that's after I didn't realize that happened, but afterwards I obviously I'm like you're my guy, man. Like got my back through all this stuff. So we'll still talk about it because
you were covering Zach Line, right? Running the flat route.
Yeah.
And Mike Thomas was running the slant.
Yeah. He had like a little 5-yard in ish, but even watching him, it's like, it kind of, you can't really tell, like, but like even him, it seems like he's kind of just like putting his hands up to like defend himself. He's so big.
Right.
He just so happened to hit me right in the side of the head, which is, from my experiences, where pretty much all my concussions have occurred is getting hit kind of in the side of the head, which kind of makes you question the whole methodology on tackling of like putting your head to the side. You're kind of exposing these temporal areas. I've never had a concussion from hitting someone with what we call growing up the 2 screws. You just put your 2 screws on them and kind of with the forehead. But obviously there's some plays where you can't avoid putting your head in the game because it's the most furthest point of your body when you bend forward. And so there's times just it's easier to use your shoulder. Sometimes you happen to put your head in there. It's just football.
And when you look at, again, just playing football, you play with some greats. You play with Harrison Smith. I mean, you can go back to, Xavier Rhodes, Anthony Harris. I mean, he ended up being a really good safety as well, followed in your footsteps. And when you talk about a Hall of Famer like Harrison Smith, he's doing things that no other safety has done. He's putting himself in an echelon of like one of the greats, but he doesn't always get the credit. So like Antoine Winfield Jr., he's getting the credit for being one of the top paid safeties in the NFL. And, he's doing this and this his first couple of years and all. But Harrison Smith has quietly been an assassin for years, and nobody really talks about how great he's been. But when you think about playing with him, what are some of the things you learned from being his teammate?
He was just a really smart player, even in situations where the whole defense wasn't really sure what check we should get to. He was a guy that was just such a cerebral guy that he could put us all on the right check. Or if we kind of had to freestyle a little bit, we would figure it out. He wasn't a guy that got, too high or too low. He wasn't, super rah in the huddle, but he also wasn't bitching in the huddle either. Mm-hmm. It's just even kilter the whole time. And just over the course of playing with him and and he would make plays in kind of clutch moments, you just you feel better when you're out there having another guy that is going to be in the right spot. It's not going to miss an assignment, and at any point in the game can make a big play. So just being around that guy, it makes you play with more confidence too, because it's like you're taking a test together and you have another really smart guy to help you take the test. So if you forget one of the answers, he's got it.
And when you think about, we're going to transition a little bit into the upcoming game. Vikings are playing the Falcons. This is going to air after the game, but just give an insight to people. So you've played with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins now moves on, not because of anybody besides money. That's what people are doing. This is a business. He had an opportunity to make more money somewhere else, so he took it. You'd be dumb not to. And so he moves on to the Falcons. He's now coming back to US Bank Stadium. As a player that's played with him and watched him and played against him, how much does that help a guy like Harrison Smith heading into this game, saying like, I know what this guy wants to do half the time. I know some of the ways he tries to look me off or some of the throws he wants to make. Is there anything that you, like if you were playing in this, that you could take from your time with him or Harrison Smith time with him to say, this is what we try to want to get out of him for this game?
Yeah, you kind of let the chess match begin, so to speak, because at the same time, he also knows how you operate. So he knows, Harrison's down, like he could blitz, he could be dropping to the half field, he could be dropping to the middle. And so it obviously helps a lot to be kind of familiar with them, what their capabilities are, the throws they can and can't make, their scrambling abilities, and things like that. So it does help a little bit, but at the same time, you have to realize they also know a lot about you. And so that'll be kind of a interesting little, like I said, kind of a chess match, like a game within the game. Obviously, as Harrison disguises a lot and is kind of all over the place, and that defense in general too. So, and I think anytime you go and play against your old team, like you naturally want to play well. It's like showing up in front of your ex-girlfriend with your new girlfriend. Like you're gonna try to look as good as you can. Like you're gonna try to show off. So it'll be, I anticipate him kind of having a little bit more juice, Kirk Cousins, for this game, and not wanting to embarrass himself in front of his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, and so when you think about, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
When you think about, this upcoming game and, again, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, everybody's talking about the matchup now. The Vikings are 10-2. The Falcons are heading in a different direction. What is it about the Vikings organization? Because it seems like they're always like right here. You guys are always like 8 wins, 9 wins, and then 10 wins left. Like you have those years. And then what has it been about the sustainability to kind of not ever be like that 1-win team, but then still like how it's hard to get over that hump to get past the NFC Championship and get to the Super Bowl? But what is it about? I mean, I know part of it is some of the guys have been around for a long time, but Harrison Smith being one of the longest. What is about that sustainability of this team, like the culture and what Minnesota's been about?
I think it's overlap of when you have guys from a really good season And then when those guys stick around and then you have some new guys come in, they're able to kind of translate that culture and that kind of winning mentality and like, hey, this is how you win games. I was a part of these types of teams that done that. And then that carries over into the next kind of generation of Vikings. And then as they kind of get older and they're tenured and the new guys come in, that gets passed down. So you really has to start somewhere with some guys that have gone deep in the playoffs, have won, and know what it takes to win and play at a high level. They kind of permeates throughout to different guys, and then it just kind of keeps carrying over. So that's why you kind of see these kind of continual like good seasons, is because that culture is kind of getting passed down and passed down and passed down, and that's also why some organizations you see just a lot of losing. Like they haven't had any winning teams to kind of like show, hey, this is how you win games. This is what the culture is like, and to be able to pass that down. But it just kind of takes kind of that one team or season to kind of get that going, and then you can hopefully kind of pass that down through the generation, so to speak, of new players coming into the organization.
And speaking of new players, there's going to be players that retire, end up where you're at. Something you've been a part of now, and you're the CEO, Braintree. Explain to the people a little bit about what you're trying to do with brain health and wellness. Because I know when it comes to football, concussions, so on and so forth, like my dad's brain, when he passed away, we had it donated because we wanted to know. Half the stuff that was going on with him. And he was high functioning, never would know, like he had moments of depression, but we didn't really know the extent of it because he played in the 70s and 80s, so it was well before like anybody cared about health and wellness and brain stuff. And football, men had to be men. You had to be warriors. You couldn't be vulnerable. You couldn't open up to your wife or your girlfriend. Like you had to be this tough guy. And so now you're into this space of health and wellness. Explain that a little bit before we get out of here.
Yeah. So, in my 12 years in the most violent sport in the world, at the end of my career, I still could not find effectively dosed, banned substance-free products to help support cognitive health. So one of my college teammates and myself, we hired his mom, who is a neurologist, on our medical advisory board to formulate a line of pharmaceutical grade products that are designed to enhance, preserve, and protect cognitive health. I was kind of always the locker room supplement nutrition guy. So I was always the guy kind of making sure guys weren't taking banned substances or kind of messing with them about all the junk food they would eat. And I was kind of like the supplement guy in the locker room. And so it was a space that I was already kind of familiar with and knew a lot about, but then just at the end of my career, just didn't have anything really for myself or my teammates. And so we launched Braintree Nutrition. I've been working on that ever since. And so there's kind of this interesting dichotomy of like the make football violent again guy and like the brain health guy. And obviously I was a physical player. That was my MO. I sustained my own concussions and TBIs and injuries. And so that's how I've been able to sort of restore my own cognitive health after having a kind of a career-ending concussion that was really gruesome, and being able to help improve these areas that people are relying on prescription medications for. So trying to give people natural, more holistic alternatives to focus, memory, neuroprotection, stress and anxiety, sleep, hydration, kind of these foundational areas of cognitive health that if you can't handle with sleep, diet, exercise, that's where supplements like Braintree Nutrition come in to help supplement those areas and just kind of give you some nutrition that you might not be able to get from food or get naturally.
Yeah, and I think people don't understand how important brain health is. It's just one of those things where you just assume it's just like, I'm good. God's going to take care of me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it's like, yeah, but you need to be a little bit more focused on it, whether it's conversation, whether it's mental health therapists. And then, like you said, if it's CBD, whatever it might be, but finding things, especially for players that play, because I know that's part of it, is there's so many substances they tell you are banned, but then they don't look at everything. So then all of a sudden the guy takes something, thinks it's fine. Trainers kind of say, hey, well, it's on you. We don't really know. He takes it. He tests positive because of a random test. Of course, somebody probably told on him, and you test positive.
Yeah. We know how it goes.
You test positive. Yeah. And then, and it's like, well, look, I asked and y'all told me it was okay. And because I had a teammate do that. Like we asked, he took it, and they still came back and got him. And they were like, well, we told you at your own risk, So it's like, well, maybe you research it. So I'm glad you're doing that, because when I looked at that too, I was like, oh man, this is cool. Because I do talk to a lot of college players, because I do the Gophers pregame show as well. And And that's one thing when I talk to college players about, I'm like, man, like don't underestimate how much you put into this sport and how much is taken from you. Because so many players just assume it's give, and it's like, no, it's taking too.
Yeah.
Like it is taking from you. So you need to do your own, put it back, because once you're done, and this, once you're done, you're done. They do not care to like help you actively. You have to search, you have to seek, you have to go out, and oftentimes it goes without a response. And that's why I know, like I just talked to Pat Williams. He was at the game a while ago, and I was talking to him about that, about when he was done playing and how he was in his house a lot and didn't want to come out. And I'm like, yeah, that's just what football does to you. Like it puts you in a state of like a weird depression fog, that you feel like the world's against you and nobody cares. And and that's just the enemy. That's just the devil trying to like creep in. And some players, we know this, players that played, some don't last. They want to end their own life, or they don't want to be around people. And I think, you and Xavier Rose, I'm like, man, that's key. Because I know for me, being back around sports, doing this stuff has kept me mentally active. Like it's kept me excited to be around the sport. Because when I first left, like I left because of injury, and I threw gear away and I threw hoodie. Like I didn't want anybody to know I played football. Like I'm done. And now I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, when the Ravens send me stuff or teams send me stuff that I played for, I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Like I'll wear the hat, I'll wear this. And and it's no shame in it anymore. But at first it was shame. It's like, man, I didn't make it for 15 years. I didn't make $100 million. Like, and I think that wears on you too. It
is definitely a weird transition, kind of going back into what I would call civilian life. But, the game of football, it kind of induces so much stress and anxiety because there's so much uncertainty in football and the career of football. So even being in the NFL, if you're not a first round pick or a solidified star, there's uncertainty every day about your job. And then there's uncertainty every day about, like, is this day going to be a good practice or a bad practice, a good game or a bad game? We all go into the games, obviously, with like a positive mindset and trying to, make all the plays and things like that. But I always kind of say, like, brain health is mental health is brain health. If you aren't sleeping well and you can't remember things and you're stressed, all that is going to just compound. And that's what kind of actually gets on you when it comes to the mental health and depression. Anxiety rates are like out of the freaking roof right now, continuing to trend in the wrong direction. So like I said, we're just trying to give people access to products that can kind of help alleviate these areas as natural as we can with effectively dosed products. So just trying to do our part to help, like I always say too, during football, in order to maximize your career, you have to be extremely selfish. You have to be me all the time. I got to train. I got to do this. I got to watch film. Like I don't have time for that. And so being done playing football, it's been very rewarding to kind of put my energy back into helping people. And it's almost like you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And so this is kind of like my journey of taking care of others through a business of being able to try to help people out with their brain and mental health.
Well, I'm Ron Johnson. That's Andrew Sendejo, former Vikings DB, also NFL DB, play for other teams as well. But of course, we all know him as a Minnesota Viking. Coming up next, we got the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each, and we'll do that after a word from our sponsors.
Great stuff from Andrew Sendejo. We're brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook for a reason, because they have so many options for the sports viewer, the sports wagerer. When you have a hunch, it's almost a guarantee that you can cash in on that hunch. Is it rushing yards, receiving yards, total receptions, how many points the kicker is going to get? All of those options are available for a typical NFL game. You've also got NBA, NHL, college football playoff futures options. It's all at FanDuel. You can bet before the game, bet in game with their live wagering options as well. Here's the deal right now for new customers. Bet 5, win that bet, get $150. Bet 5, win that $5 bet, get $150 with your first wager. $150 in bonus bets can go a long way. FanDuel.com, FanDuel Sportsbook app. Make every moment more. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Well, yeah, man, have fun with Andrew Sendejo, but now it's time for the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, about a minute each a day. Take it away, Sam.
All right, Wolves talk. Timberwolves have come alive a bit. They did lose Sunday night, kind of let a lead slip away in the second half against Golden State. That wasn't great, but they've won 4 out of 5. And those 4 wins, Ron, they held the opponent under 95 points in every game. The defense is back. So did we panic a little prematurely about the Wolves?
No, we didn't panic. They were playing bad. So they got it figured out. I'll give them that. But, when you look at their standings right now, it's just not great. They're out of the playoffs, potentially. They're worse than the Lakers. And so that's the problem with this. Is like, how long is it going to take for them to fully gel and be where they need to be? But here's what really got me. You beat a Warriors team. You yell, you scream at Steph Curry, and then you woke up a monster and he came out and hit you with a 30 ball the next game. Like, you gotta know your I get it. This is Anthony Edwards' bravado. This is his persona. This is who he is. He's got the AEs coming out. We saw Jordan Addison with the AE cleats, the AE1 cleats, with the Addison logo on them. Like, I get all that. But you gotta be humble. Like, you got 12 wins. Beat a Steph Curry, and then just walk off the court. Like, don't yell in his face. You can yell to your teammates. You can don't go like good night and all that. Like, no. And so what happens? Draymond Green comes, takes Rudy Gobert to the rack, bangs out, and then he hits them with the night. Like, you woke a sleeping giant in the Warriors, and so the Warriors, I don't think ever really cared about the Timberwolves. Like, it was never really a thing. Like, we made more of it with the Andrew Wiggins thing than they did. But now I think we've added to it. We've added to this rivalry that was never there. And now they're going to now Steph Curry's going to take every game against Anthony Edwards personal until he reminds him, I'm still the guy. Like, this is still my show. I can still score 40. I can still hit 5 threes if I want to. I can still take your guy. And the Rudy Gobert defense through the pick was the worst. Like, it was so, like, the pick wasn't even a solid pick, and it was a little guard hitting you on the side, and you got hit as if you just got blindsided by Charles Barkley or something. So I don't think we panicked. I'm sorry, panicking might have been a little premature, but they're not in the playoffs. So I think we are still warranted for how we felt about them. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that the criticism was all deserved. I love the hatred between those teams. It makes for kind of compelling, fun basketball.
Oh yeah.
It's imagine if Clay was still there. Remember, Clay and McDaniels got into that scuffle last year. There was the headlock with Rudy and Draymond, and then Draymond goes on TNT and rips him the whole playoffs. Like, there's some bad blood there. So whenever they come back to Target Center, I'm locked in. I mean, that's going to be good stuff. I think the Wolves kind of emptied the emotional clip on Friday in the win, and like you said, they didn't have enough in the tank on Sunday. So back at it this week, playing I think Clippers and Lakers again. So more chance to beat the West Coast teams.
Next up, what you got?
Yeah, college football playoff. We have our first ever 12-team playoff selection. What do you think of the bracket? Do you think the committee made any mistakes?
No, I don't think they did. The only thing I think the mistake is going to be is, and I hope this happens, because if it doesn't happen, nobody's going to talk about it. And when you look at the college football playoff picture, it's the reseeding thing. I don't know if you've heard about that, but they are not reseeding. So meaning if Boise State or somebody upsets somebody, technically what should happen is the number 1 team should be able to get the worst seed in the bracket left, and they're not doing that. So basically, I forgot what the question was. The question was like, would you rather be? And so when they looked at like SMU versus Penn State, if SMU upsets Penn State, that makes it easier for Texas, because Texas, technically they're hoping Texas plays Penn State, but now Texas or Clemson could end up playing SMU. And so it makes it easier for them. You look at Ohio State and Tennessee, they now have to then go play the number 1 team because they technically right now the lowest seed. So in their minds, the way they did it was 6 would win, 5 would win, and then 8 or 9 would win, which should go to 1. And so, but that might not happen that way. And then same with Boise, to be determined. And you got Arizona State to be determined, Oregon and Georgia. So Oregon should get the lowest, but they could end up getting Ohio State or Tennessee. And so again, that's just tough sledding when you think about how they did it. And I think I might be wrong on that. I forgot who, but one of those teams, it was either Oregon or Georgia, could get screwed in this because they're not going to reseed. And so if there's an upset, one of those teams, people say should quote unquote get the lowest seed available to play, but no, They might not. They might get like they might get 6 or 8 or 9, sorry, and the number 2 team or 3 or 4 team gets seed 11 or 12. And that's where I think people are like, next year we got to talk about reseeding. So that's the only thing. Other than that, I think they got it right. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a little troublesome that Ohio State could play Oregon in the quarterfinal. That just doesn't feel right. But I don't know exactly how I would have done it differently, because I think you're probably going to screw. I think you're right, Ron. You reseed, and give. So if Clemson wins, then Oregon should play Clemson.
Right.
If SMU, like if Clemson loses and SMU wins, SMU should play Oregon.
Yep.
Oregon should have that benefit instead of having to play an Ohio State team that if they simply don't choke against Michigan, they're the 2. Right. I think it was a tough job for the committee to get this right and make it equitable for everybody, but that's probably the biggest flub here. Is
because you could have a SMU Boise State playoff game, because Boise State's 3 and they have Penn State or SMU. Now, Penn State, I think, is stronger and bigger, but, and then Notre Dame, Indiana could play Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State could play Oregon, and Clemson, Texas will play Arizona State, which I think Clemson, Texas, people are forgetting Clemson's actually pretty good. And they know how to win. They've been here before. So if Clemson somehow knocks off Texas, Clemson can beat Arizona State. And that's where I think this gets weird. Now, of course, if Texas runs by them, people are saying Texas is going to win this because Ohio State could potentially beat Oregon, or Tennessee could. And so that's where Oregon has a tough sledding. But then Oregon, of course, if they have to play Texas, that's the other part about this, versus if they have to play like at Arizona State. Again, it just feels like Texas has their Texas. And here's the thing too, if you were Texas, so would you rather be the 3 seed and get a bye? Because that's what somebody was saying. Would you rather be a 5, or would you rather be, because technically Texas, where they're at, they could have been a 3, had a bye, but then had to play like SMU or Penn State, or they get to play Clemson, get a home game, and then they get to play Arizona State. You know what I mean? It feels like Texas has their way, and they don't have to play Georgia until the end again. So it just seems like they got, because them getting Oregon, yeah. Oregon's good. Oregon's physical, fast. But yeah, I think the committee got it right. I just think they should have reseeded maybe. And Alabama didn't deserve to be in it, because I know that's the question everybody wants to talk about. No, if you lose that way, you shouldn't be in it. That's just me. What's the last one?
Yep, last one. Let's just talk about the Gophers bowl game. Virginia Tech on January 3rd. Gophers are favored to win the game. PJ Fleck's never lost a bowl game. It's the Duke's Mayo Bowl, Ron. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fun one down in Charlotte. I'm debating, because I know the Vikings play that Sunday, so debating if we go down like the day before, get the grandparents to come watch the kids, go down the day before, watch the game, and then fly back that night or fly back the next day. But might just be home, watch it on TV, do a little postcast from here. But it's going to be a good one. And to think about, I know nothing about Virginia Tech. I haven't looked into it yet. But the one thing I say about PJ Fleck is no matter who he plays in bowl games, you give him a month to prepare. It feels like his team always comes out ready to play. And they treat this like they don't treat this as a vacation. Because I was just talking to somebody about that. Like bowl games used to be treated as a vacation sometimes. But now a lot of these teams are using it as like a stomping ground to show their recruits. Like, look what we are. We're on the national stage January 3rd. They got a after December bowl game. So even that, to play in a January bowl game, even though it's the Duke's Mayo, you're playing in the January bowl game. So that's going to be a big opportunity after New Year's for the world to be able to see, and recruits to be able to see, because now I'm seeing more and more, like Duke's quarterback just hit the portal. He was a starter on a 9-3 team, and he hit the portal. So I have no idea what's going on with college football, but I think these bowl games are going to be key for the Gophers for sure, to make sure they lock their recruits down and keep the players they have.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's cool how they win the bowl game every single year and have a good chance to win again this year. It ends the year on a really nice note. I think 8 wins, if you finish this year with 8 wins, compared to the expectations, it's hard not to call it a pretty successful year.
Yeah. And that's the one thing about PJ Fleck. He finds a way to do it. And again, they still have the later signing recruits, I think in February. He signed most of his early recruits that wanted to for sure be Gophers, and you kind of locked those guys up. He locked the border up, got the number one player in the state of Minnesota again. So the last 3 recruiting classes, he's gotten the number one player, whether it's through transfer to come back or Coy Parrish that came in. So, but that'll do it for me today. I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Maxwell. Make sure you guys subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube, Amazon Fire, Roku. You can go on anywhere you get your podcast as well. You can go in the SiriusXM radio app as well and download the Locked On Sports Minnesota channel, and you can get all of our shows there as well if you like to listen on the go. But I'm Ron Johnson, the Sam Ekstrom. We will be back for a postcast Monday night. So it's going to be a late one, but hopefully you guys can stay up with us and check us out, see how the Vikings can pull this off against the Bears. So the Bears are no slouches. But have a great week, people.